I'm Charles Oldroyd. I'm a GIE for Origina, covering Cognos Analytics and BI products. I started working with those products in 1995 when Cognos was an independent company as an associate instructor, and worked through with them presenting their courses for their legacy products until 2006 when they introduced the web-based suite. At that point I became lead instructor for the design product, Framework Manager, and continued to train those products right through until IBM bought Cognos out as a company. I worked for IBM as an instructor, and then they passed the business to Arrow ECS, and I continued to work for them. Along the way, I worked for a number of VARs, again presenting training courses, but also helping to implement the products. And so I learned not only best practice, but also some of the practical considerations of making the products work in a live environment. Well-established Cognos installations are, generally speaking, very stable. But with the passage of time, a number of things can happen. Firstly, we can have established processes that randomly fail, and that's generally due to a lack of resource somewhere. It could be a lack of memory, it could be a lack of disk space. It's, generally speaking, a lack of maintenance. Or it could be that as a result of upgrading another related product, such as a database management system, they find that there are interfacing problems with Cognos. The third is vulnerability, security vulnerability, which because of the age of the product leaves it exposed to viruses or attack. One customer found a cube that was well established, had been in place a long time, and it was randomly failing. I didn't know why. The cube itself was relatively small. It hadn't increased substantially in size over the years, but it was randomly failing. It was on a schedule, it was being built overnight, and they just couldn't understand why sometimes it would work and sometimes it wouldn't. And I pointed out to them that the size of the cube was irrelevant in some respects. What was important was the volume of data that was being read in order to build the cube. And the cause was almost certainly a lack of available resource. When I checked the log files, I found that indeed there were problems writing the data into temporary files on disk. And when they increased the disk space allocation for the cube builds, the problem went away. Not immediately apparent because the cube itself was very small and hadn't changed in size. But what they failed to understand was that it was the volume of source data that was being read that required the space for the temporary files. Another example would be a customer who's recently upgraded their Oracle installation from version 12 to 19C, only to find that their Cognos installation does not support Oracle 19C. They had no intentions whatever of upgrading their Cognos installation, but now found themselves in the position where they were obliged to. And so we ran a sandbox project for them to install and configure the latest version of Cognos, which they downloaded at the point of coming across to Origina, and test that out against existing reports and processes to make sure that they ran satisfactorily before moving into the production environment. And that upgrade is now taking place, handled by a colleague of mine. They thought that the upgrade would work. On paper, it should have worked. We proved that it did work. Let's say it took an awful lot of anxiety out of going live and kind of putting your fingers in your ears. During the onboarding process, I normally take part in a bridge call with the clients to introduce myself and also ask a number of questions and send out a questionnaire as an information gathering exercise. This means that when the customer phones in the first ticket, I don't have to ask them basic questions about their installation, the version that they're running and stuff like that, the configuration. It's the detail that matters. Consequently, when the first ticket's launched, we're not speaking for the first time. So the fact that they're talking to the same person helps enormously because we have an immediate rapport. And that rapport builds with ticket 2 and ticket 3. And furthermore, it means that because they're dealing with the same person, they don't have to turn back the clock and start explaining from square one what the problem is each time they phone in a ticket. Now, this is not the case necessarily with other support desks where they're dealing with a different person for each ticket and sometimes multiple people for the same ticket. Customer attitude does change. They become far more trusting, far more open, and far more willing to try things when the solution isn't immediately apparent. With regard to Cognos in the cloud, the big problem is one of access. Now, Cognos on the cloud can be implemented in a number of ways by clients. Firstly, they could just buy into IBM's Cloud Pak arrangement where everything gets uploaded onto their server. We can't touch that. We can't support it because we have no access to it. That's IBM's bag. There's nothing we can do there. Alternatively, they may have an installation where they've uploaded some into the cloud and they still have some on-premises. We can handle the on-premises stuff, of course. There is then the third option that they have the Cloud Pak, but that's actually being hosted by a third party rather than IBM. If we can access it, then we can support it. It's all to do with access, really, rather than the product itself, because the product itself is the same thing. It's just a question of where it sits and how much access we have to it. For customers considering the Cloud Pak version, they should really give consideration to how long they're going to keep the product in place, because Cognos is often now a sunset application, and how easy it's going to be to maintain it going forward. There will inevitably be challenges with regard to interfacing with other compatible products, DBMS systems particularly, and we shall have to manage those, or somebody will have to manage those. How do we do that if we don't have access? So I've been working with Origina for around 5 years, and when I was first approached, I was in two minds as to whether to take up the offer, simply because I felt that I would be badly exposed working on my own and working remotely, and I wasn't sure it was something that I wanted to do. In the event, I did take up the offer and have found that that was not the case at all. I feel very much a part of a team. I'm very, very well supported when I'm working with perhaps a distributed installation with elements that I'm not so familiar with. There are other GIEs who I can pull in to support on a ticket, and I find that working with Origina as a company is a rewarding experience. By contrast with other companies, I have to say, that I've worked for. I'm very, very pleased to be working with Origina, very happy to be working with Origina. I think they're a great bunch of guys.